Sheelah, you're known internationally, all over America, for your independent studies, your proprietary products. You have helped so many people change their condition: Lyme disease, autoimmune, arthritis, cancer, the list goes on and on. What led you here? What started this whole journey for you?
Well, several years ago, I was actually appointed by the governor as one of only two people to the Naturopathic Medical Board of Examiners. And that was attributed to not just studies in the United States, but also Germany and New Zealand, scientists and neurologists that came together, and whereby we were able to build an algorithm and put all this information and data together over the past decade. And that's how we are able to actually come up with the severe and chronic formulations for the patients with different compounds from the cannabis plant.
Wow. How'd the journey get started? What led you here? What interest did you have in it?
About 10 years, that decade ago, we had a situation in the family, and my dad was my best friend, my camping partner. We had horses together. We actually rodeoed for 5 years too. Anyway, he went in for a routine surgery and basically didn't make it out. They had to airvac him down to a major hospital where he stayed in the critical care unit for about 5 months, and they couldn't control what the diagnosis was. So in fact, they amputated both of his legs, above the knee, and he didn't come out of it. So he stayed in the hospital, hooked up to morphine the whole time. And he survived because of his family. He literally said, when he came to, he said, I survived because of the love for my family. And so he made it home. He made it home, but he made it home addicted to opioids, morphine. So they take the IV out, and then they have a caregiver. I was his caregiver. So they give you, they start with Oxycontin and oxycodone, and then and it builds up in your system. And so when that's not enough, they slapped on gabapentin, which is Neurontin patches, and that wasn't enough for the phantom pains that were in his legs.
Oh,
so then on top of the Oxycontin and oxycodone, they gave me methadone. So now he's doing 4 methadone in the morning, 4 in the middle of the day, and 4 at night. Well, with methadone, you take 4, the 2 from the morning are still in your body. So over a period of like 5 years of taking all these pills and synthetic drugs, ultimately, after he made it, his body succumbed to the opioids. He went into multiple organ failure and passed away. But
There's a gift in all this.
The night before, this is the part, is that the night before, I come from a very staunch conservative family. So the night before he passed away, he said, Sheelah, you need to get me some of that wacky tobacco. So I'm saying to my dad, you want me to go find marijuana? It's not even legal, right? And who would have thought? Who would have thought that? But the next morning he passed away. So
did that stay with you? Did that thought stay with you? You had been in a head-on collision. You were having some of your own issues with inflammation. Where did the CBDs and the vision come into play?
Well, after he passed away, I also lost my mother about 18 months later to a literally congestive heart failure, broken heart. So I lost her too. So I make it clear that even back in the day, even though I don't like to admit it, it happens. The journey is real, and we need comfort. We need help. Synthetic drugs are not the answer. I went that route. I started taking Wellbutrin and started taking pills myself, not knowing, you see, because you don't know. So it's not done with malice. I don't think anybody's doing anything with malice. I think it's just that we just don't know any alternatives. So when my dad had said that to me about a year later, I thought, you know what, maybe this is my saving grace. Maybe this is my calling. Maybe this is what I need to do. And so that's when I started researching the cannabinoids and the constituents and compounds throughout the marijuana plant.
I mean, it kind of became a positive obsession, if you will, right? Like it
Oh.
became something that you could not stop. I always say when I share your story that it found you. It's like you had no choice in the matter. This was something that you were here to do.
Right. And that's when the journey began. And then, like you said, I don't know if it was an obsession. It's been a
Beautiful obsession.
yeah,
Okay.
a story 14 hours a day, 18 hours a day for the past 10 years. That's where the proprietaries started coming from. The algorithm was built, and that's how we were formed today.
You're an advocate for people around the globe about really understanding what they're purchasing. You know, what CBDs are really all about. You're constantly educating audiences. I'm just blown away. The doctors, the chiropractors, the naturopaths, even the veterinarians, the psychologists for pain or anxiety and depression, and all these dispensaries where you're educating these staffs. You have this conviction about people actually giving the correct information. There's a phrase that I hear you use all the time when you're constantly talking about CBDs, and it's all about what they're suspended in. Tell us more about that.
When you were talking about a little bit about my accident, I was actually hit by a drunk driver, and so I ended up in the hospital, also paralyzed from the neck down for a good 2 years. And in that time period, I had been studying, so I know that CBDs are amazing for inflammation, stimulating the lymph system, and so on and so forth. I was paralyzed. I needed them. It wasn't working, so I thought my system was too compromised, and that CBDs were just not going to work for me. Well, my girlfriend Brenda owned a lab down in Phoenix, and I gave my bottle to her that I purchased off the internet or at some shop. I don't even remember where I got it. And she brought the lab results back to me, and I paid $200 for a bottle of CBDs for 500 milligrams, and there was only 20 in it.
Wow.
So it wasn't just that the CBDs, there was nothing in the bottle. Then the second bottle I bought was the same price. It was $200 for 500 milligrams, and there wasn't any in it at all.
Wow.
So that's basically how True Balance was born, and Body Temple was born because we needed to formulate just personally for me, because I needed it. I knew it worked because I had studied
were
it.
concerned about the inflammation in your spine, right?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Right, and that's where this whole started. And so you created your own product, and then you started noticing that people needed help. You were just listening, and you had a huge business prior to this. You still do. Mm-hmm. And you are out helping people, and you started saying, hey, try this, and people are coming back. It's working and wanted more. Is that kind of how it all got started?
That's exactly how it got
So what
started.
is it about the product being suspended, when you talk about suspended?
Okay, so what we're seeing on the market right now, which is really quite scary, because people right now are seeking out CBDs. Mm-hmm. You know, they hear it's good for seizures, it's good for diabetes, it's good for your complete blood count to get things in normal range. The problem is that CBDs are only as good as what they're suspended in. You see a lot of MCT oil that it's suspended in. That stands for medium chain triglycerides. We're trying to get cholesterol, triglycerides, blood pressure, anything in a complete blood count or a CBC into normal range. Well, if you're drinking MCT oil, triglycerides, it's kind of defeating the purpose of putting CBD in it. And I'm just saying MCT has got its place in the nutritional area, but drinking it is not one of them.
Right.
Not only that, it exacerbates your gastrointestinal tract. So if you're taking CBDs for diabetes or for GI issues,
Right.
and it's suspended in MCT oil,
Makes no sense.
it's going to get way worse. The same goes for glycerin. Glycerin is nothing more than a byproduct of biodiesel.
Wow.
I mean, so why would you take CBDs that were suspended in biodiesel?
Right.
It's fat, and it exacerbates gene mutations. So if you've got a child that has seizure disorder of any sort at all, whether it's tonic, myoclonic, any type of gene mutation, they're going to exacerbate the seizures. And I was teaching at a symposium in Las Vegas, and I could see in my peripheral vision down to the right, a little girl. She was probably about 9 years old, and I could see her twitching. What you call myoclonics. And the mom was sitting there, and the bud tender that sold her that product was sitting right behind her. And the little girl went into a full-blown tonic or grand mal seizure. And she had never had one before. She had never had a grand mal seizure before. And the thing is that everybody's seeking out CBDs, and when they're suspended in glycerin, it actually exacerbates seizures and makes them worse than if no CBDs at all. And the mom started giving her more because she thought, well, it's CBDs, so I'm just going to give her some more,
right,
and that is going to stop her seizures. It's not so. You have to get CBDs that are suspended in the right soluble, or it can damage and make things a lot worse.
So what are these companies creating these products that just are not necessarily pure? They call them pure, but they're not pure?
Like I said, I don't think anybody's doing it with malice. They're just not educated.
Yeah,
and
right. Gotcha.
Because I spent the 10 years with my team building the algorithms and understanding the gene mutations and understanding the CB1 and CB2 receptors throughout our physiology, we can make a clear conclusion that the pure protein soluble, which is what Body Temple and True Balance are all about, is pure protein, vegan friendly, 100% organic and pure. Another example would be diabetes. People come in and they're not going to tell you what they have. They're not going to come in and say, Steve, I have diabetes and triglyceride issues and this and that. They're going to come in because they're seeking out CBDs, plain and simple. If somebody that has diabetes gets a hold of CBD and a glycerin, their glucose is going to shoot through the roof.
So this is what you mean by adverse effects. So when I was reading my interview notes, I was like, what does that mean? Having adverse effects by the CBD if it's not suspended in a proper soluble, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It
Wow.
needs to be, if it's not suspended in a pure protein, you can't rest assured that it's going to be a CBD that is going to be beneficial for your diagnosis.
And what are conditions that are good examples of that? Like the main ones. So diabetes,
Well, diabetes is
heart disease, probably.
Well, anything in a CBC that you're looking for to bring into dynamic balance or homeostasis. So anything that would have to do with the RBC, red blood cell, white blood cell, platelet, hemoglobin, glucose, all of those levels, but also the receptors that's receiving it, in our bodies.
Wow. Sheelah, all True Balance and Body Temple products are formulated in the highest grade of CBDs, right? They're all vegan friendly, natural, they're suspended in pure protein, contain no artificial flavor. As a formulator, what was important to you about creating the purest form of CBD? It seems like it was really, really, really important to you.
There's a lot of CBDs out on the market, and not just what they're suspended in is not the only thing you need to look for. The way they extract it is a big issue right now because it's super inexpensive to extract CBD with butane, with ether, with alcohol, chemicals. And people use that because you get a lot more out of the plant,
Right.
and it's super cheap to do. It's down and dirty, but trace elements of chemical are in there. I don't care what you do. This is like the EPA will say, you know what, there's only 3% of arsenic in your water. That's okay.
Wrong.
But you know what, the next year it's 4%. And they say, well,
Right.
4% is okay.
Yeah.
How much ether in your CBDs is too much? Any ether in mine for my children and my grandchildren is too much. So if you see product out there that is a little bit less expensive, well, everybody's got a can of ether, right? You can just pour it on there and wash it out and it comes out CBD. Not true. And then there's a lot of CBD molecules that have been altered that come in from China. So if you see something that's less expensive, chances are they pay a penny a milligram and it's coming over on a boat from China. And it's very unfortunate because it's making people more sick. So you have to be extremely careful where your CBD source is. And it's not just the way it's extracted either. You have to be super careful with what it's flavored with. So if it's organic and they put in a cinnamon or peppermint extract, that's alcohol. And it's kind of tricky this way because that's another one that I used to use and try to hold, CBDs are meant to be taken sublingually, right? Tinctures. Try to hold cinnamon underneath your tongue for more than a minute,
wow,
more
right.
than 10 seconds or so. You have to swallow it, which means you have to buy more because it's not effective. And so they just sell. Try to hold some peppermint or cinnamon underneath your tongue. You can't do it. So, and we have experimented with, and plus it's a alcohol, it's an extract. You don't want that natural artificial flavoring in it anyways. So we use a gluten-free, sugar-free, organic vanilla bean powder in the protein so that it's all natural and gluten-free, and there's no dietary restrictions on it, and it's still a pleasant flavor, and you can hold it till the cows come home. I mean, you can hold it for 2 minutes, which is what is recommended anyway, and then swallow what's left. So those are big things to look for. Another thing that is really super important when you're looking for a CBD is that you'll notice on the labels, this was another thing that they're doing that I just, frustrating sometimes. You'll see a label that says 500 milligrams, but it doesn't say of what.
Right.
So it's legal. So it says 500 milligrams, and you flip it over and it says 10 milligrams of CBD. See, because the other constituents or compounds are much, much cheaper and easier to extract than the cannabidiol. So you get a bottle of 500 milligrams and it doesn't say 500 milligrams of pure CBD.
Is that what they're looking for?
You should look for the label to say 500 milligrams of pure CBD, not 500 milligrams. You have to question yourself, 500 milligrams of what?
Right.
Because that's all it says. They're marketing people are out to,
They are.
confuse the consumer. That's what they're doing, confusing the consumer.
Absolutely, they are.
Yeah.
Sheelah, you have thousands of customers buying your product. You have dispensaries carrying your product. You have businesses carrying your product. You've won awards for your product. I know that I've been using your product for 3 years, and I look at pictures of me 8 years ago. I look way younger. It's even anti-aging, which I love.
Yeah.
What is it about the product? What separates the product in the marketplace for your line is just over the top? What makes it over the top?
I think to start off, I would have to say that the world peace. I'm just kidding.
Right? Woohoo, right?
Sorry, I had to do it. I'd have to say world peace. No. Okay. So
Isn't that like your interior decorator? Is that her thing, right? World peace, right?
So, in all seriousness, the most important part is homogeneity and purity. And we are governed by that. We have third-party scientific testing done, and it's done randomly. So we know 100% of the time that no matter what bottle you pick up off the shelf, the homogeneity and purity is going to be at 99.9% pure. Wow. It has to be, because we administer to hospitals and to other facilities, privately run hospitals.
Yeah, right.
The second thing is that it's all organic, vegan-friendly, sugar-free, fat-free. If you have any type of severe diagnosis, severe and chronic, you can rest assured that when you go home at night, you're going to sleep the way you're supposed to. Your CBC, or complete blood count, is going to start going back into normal range. And I'll tell you why. To give you an example of what happens with the cannabidiol, a lot of people don't understand. They're seeking it out on the internet, and they're buying it because people say it does this and it does that. But how does it do it?
Right.
People don't understand how it does it. So to give you an overview of why it's so important that the purity is there, is that we have our physiology. We have our central nervous system, our immune system, and our body organs. And what happens is that God gave us CB1 and CB2 receptors. We didn't find this out until 1992. Dr. Meshulam actually figured that out. And it ended up being the largest receptor in our entire physiology. So you take your left hand, and let's say these are your CB1 and CB2 receptors throughout your central nervous system or your immune system. And then you take your synthetic drugs over here, your oxycodone, your opioids, whatever drug. They come together, the synthetic drug comes together, and it meets the receptors in your body. And it blocks them because it's supposed to. If you take a synthetic sleeping pill, it blocks the receptor to make your brain think it's time to go to sleep. Or you take an opioid or synthetic drug and it blocks the pain receptor because it's supposed to, because it's a blocking mechanism. So now you take the pure CBD in its highest form, which is why it needs to be pure, because it's going to not block the receptor. It's going to start coming together and bridging the gap in the deficiency in the endocannabinoid system and bring it back into normal range. So the purity of it is essential to the product, along with nothing that can block those receptors, meaning the artificial flavoring that people are using. Why would you use something that blocks a receptor? You need to bind it back together. So the artificial flavoring, the way it's extracted, no ether, no alcohol,
Right.
the cinnamon in the peppermint. You want the patient to be able to take that cannabidiol and sublingually and let it rest there for at least 2 minutes. So the soothing effect of the vanilla bean gluten-free powder does that for the patient and allows them to actually do what they actually purchase the
And
product
that's in all
to
your
do.
products.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So gluten-free, sugar-free. It's a critical CO2 extracted, no chemicals used, vegan-friendly there's no dietary restrictions whatsoever.
Where's the motivation come from? Is it your dad? When you look back and think about how, I hear you saying it's so profound for you to have the purest grade of product, doing things for the right reasons. You know, you go over and above and beyond, making sure.
You know what's so funny? So let's take this analogy. This is a good one, because you know how the Apple phone came out with the you can't plug it in anymore. It's not because
I would know that, right?
right.
Oh God.
You
Yeah.
have to buy their adapter now. See, they sell you other things. So they're doing it because it's good for the company, and the company makes more money.
But not my cool old stereo. That doesn't have
So it
that.
doesn't do that. So you have to go and buy more of their products. So why would they do that? So we found that out too, because we were formulating, and the derms that we have. Okay,
Which are
so
over the top, incredible.
so let's go there for a minute. The True Derm is the only scientifically proven derm to allow 4 medications to go transdermal or into the bloodstream. There is nothing else like it. Some of them will do 2 medications, some will do 3, but we're the only company that has a derm that will actually carry 4 medications transdermal. That's why it's won so many awards. But this is the funny part, because we've been through this before.
Beeswax, right?
Right. So we've been through this before because we've been formulating for 10 years, right? In clinical and in trial. So I'm in Arizona. It's hot. It's even hot in Oregon right now, right?
Right.
But so how do you ship a pure vegan product without it melting all over the place? Well, you can't. So everybody's putting in beeswax into their salves because they don't melt. Well, guess what? Have you ever put wax on your skin? Nothing can get through that. Nothing can penetrate wax. But all these salves that are out on the CBD salves that are out on the market, they've figured out the solution for the company for shipping purposes. So the company's set and they're making their money, but the patient's not getting any benefit from it because it's wax.
It's out of integrity.
So there again, True Balance Body Temple are vegan friendly, no beeswax. But what we did was we changed the packaging to accommodate the patient instead of the product to benefit the company. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was quite interesting because I made the same mistake too, I confess. I thought, oh, well, beeswax would be a good solution for that, but not for the patient. So we don't use beeswax. The packaging is non-BPO.
Constantly improving.
Yes.
And improving.
And it was super fun.
improving,
And then another thing about the derm too that we found out by accident is there again, I was hit by a drunk driver. And so anxiety for me driving is sometimes almost impossible, but not since I've been taking the tincture and the anxiety derm, which you get product cards with it. So there's no question on how to administer or where to apply. So I was putting it super late night, formulating for a severe and chronic patient, super tired. I'm usually very good about the skin regimen, you know, the anti-aging stuff. And but I had put the anxiety derm across my lip because you're supposed to. That's one of the places to administer. And I was just so tired. I just rubbed it all over my whole face. And I went to bed because I was just over it. I was just tired. And then I got up the next morning and it felt like I had a facial the night before. It worked so well on my skin.
I want some.
I know, right? You
I
have
want
some. But the reason I think is because not just the CBD, which takes away all the inflammation out of your face, which I probably need some right now, but It also, we are very diligent in the research where we get our essential oils. So for example, nothing is more pure than the oil from the plant itself. So some of the essential oils in the product, helichrysum is one of the most sought out oils in the world. So we work directly with Croatia and the harvesters, and we get the essential oils right from the plant in the country in which they're indigenous. So the kunzea comes right from New Zealand, and the lavender comes from Germany, and the helichrysum comes from the mountains of Croatia. So that's why it's so pure. And remember, the soluble now is scientifically proven to carry all 4 of those transdermal. So now you're getting the anti-inflammation, you're getting the yummy oils right from the country where the plant's indigenous, and it's just really, really, really awesome. So that's what sets apart the True Derm for sure.
Absolutely.
The beeswax and the no beeswax.
So Sheelah, as you know, I've been taking CBD products now, your products, for 3 years, and my mother had a serious accident. She's taken the product. She's continually calling me and telling me about how uneducated people are, that they don't understand, and now that she's retired, she watches a lot of news, and she says people really don't understand CBDs, and they think they're going to get high from CBD. She goes, they just don't understand it. What do consumers need to know, and why are people skeptical? Is it that they're uninformed?
I know for a fact they're not informed. That's a given, and that's unfortunate. That's why we're here, to take that to the next level, because for decades marijuana has been tagged, and the bad stigma has been attached to it for so long that it can't be reversed overnight. So it's up to people like Body Temple and True Balance to bring forward the scientific studies that we've done over the past decade to the people, so they understand that it's okay, that it's a journey that we're on together, that there are other options. They don't have to go down the Western medicine path or the naturopathic path. Maybe it's a Western and cannabis combined. Maybe it's something that they want to do holistic, maybe not. But the point being is that the stigma is probably going to be there for a while, but it's okay, because the patients are with a team that has researched it, that has been educated, and we want to work on a journey together to educate the patients themselves. And then maybe they can pay it forward and pass it on to another family member. But we need to come together as a nation to try to educate the public that, look, there are options. They don't have to be in the situation that I was in. And I know in my heart of hearts that if I would have known then what I know now, I'm confident that my parents would still be here right now. So if we can just help one more family, or just one more father, or somebody's brother or uncle understand that there's a path of least resistance, and that path is holistic medicine in a lot of cases, and we just need to work together and help each other out.
Now let's talk more about this. This is how I came into play. I, as you know, have a huge clientele, and I would hear my son-in-law has cancer, or my best friend has Lyme disease. I remember coaching this client, and from nowhere, sharp, clear, she couldn't remember anything. And she kept saying, will you send that to me in writing? And I said, something's going on with you physically. And then we found out she had Lyme disease. And then I sent them to your company. And that's how this all took place. And I kept hearing of people that were going through challenges. And they would come back to me and say, the representatives were amazing. The assessment they did with me, follow through they did with me. And I would continually hear that their condition changed. When you think about what separates your tribe, I mean, you have a community. You've created a community. Your proprietary product, your 2 companies have created a community. What makes your community so unique in comparison? People don't buy a product, right, and get a community. They buy something and they get a community, or they get involved.
I think the difference, and that's a really good question, because you really have to analyze that and what's going on out there. And I want to emphasize the fact that I don't think anybody's trying to do anything wrong. I don't think anybody's, well, most of them are not trying to mislead the public, but I think the unique part about Body Temple working together with True Balance is that it's got the entire spectrum of overall health. So you're going to not just buy the product and walk away. You're going to buy the product, you're going to have a coach, you're going to have nutrition advice, you're going to have recipes to make. And so it's an overall well-being of your entire physiology. It's not just going in and buying a CBD bottle off of a shelf and calling it good. The way that you administer it, the way you dose it, how many milligrams per milliliter should you have? What diagnosis do you have? How are we going to address your overall well-being, not just take some CBDs and see you later.
So I keep coming back to your dad.
Yeah.
Like, is this where that conviction, when I talk about you, and I know when I'm having a client, when I go back the last couple of years talking to clients and I describe you, I say this purpose found her. It wasn't the other way around. This like it was something that wanted to embody her and bring into the world. And it's been a driving force. I mean, if I look at your schedule and your commitment, it's been, you're up at 4 o'clock in the morning, where you have been for many, many years.
Yeah. This is another part of the stigma thing. If my Irish Catholic father can literally reach up out of his grave and pull me into the cannabis industry, then he means business. So I think the stigma attached to it is slowly going away. And I guess what I would say is you don't know unless you try it. You can't get high. You know, there's no THC in it, so it's not going to harm you. So what are you going to lose? There's nothing to lose. What are you going to gain? Your health back. You know, what is your health worth to you?
So this is kind of getting personal. You weren't supposed to walk.
Right.
They said you would probably never walk. You would be in a wheelchair.
Right.
When you think of your recovery, you have a strong mind, you have a strong faith, and you recovered. But then the doctors were concerned about the actual inflammation. And that's what kind of got you on this journey.
I have a huge scar on my back because when I got hit with a drunk driver, I broke C3 all the way down to T2. So I was completely paralyzed from the neck down. So even to this day, even though I went into my neurosurgeon, which I had 4 of them, and they said I would never walk again because C4 was in my spinal cord. So, So I was literally, my daughter had to feed me and bathe me for 2 years. I couldn't get up. And they said I would never walk again. But the thing is that, and I attribute this to major mental health, physical therapy, the grace of God, of course, and cannabidiol, because that's what took the inflammation away. I'm sure it is, because I still have to go into my lymph specialist, because if any fluid gets in my spine, it could be very dangerous for me. So I went into the lymph specialist and she's like, "What the hell are you doing?"
Right.
Because I'm cleaner than my 30-year-old daughter. I have less inflammation inside than my 30-year-old daughter. And I'm sure it has something to do with the CBD, because I eat the pure form of it every day. But yeah, inflammation is huge, and it makes a huge difference in the journey of life.
You're probably glad you said to your dad, or when your dad said to you, "I need some wacky tobacco."
Yeah.
And that it stayed with you.
Yeah. Very blessed for sure. So another one of the really important things that sets True Balance and Body Temple apart from a lot of the other competitors or brands on the market is the way that it's processed. Not just the critical CO2 remove or extraction process, but also a similar process to liposomal technology. It's also referred to as LET, liposomal encapsulation technology. And what it does is the liposomal, similar to liposomal, it encapsulates the CBD molecule itself so that it's better able to be absorbed through your system. So when you purchase a bottle of Body Temple or True Balance, it's going to be, the bioavailability of that is 6 times at least of any other product on the market. So what that means to you as a patient or consumer is that you would need 1/3 of the product that you would need to administer with any other product. So the benefits are at least double with half of the amount of, with half the dose.